Welcome back. So now we're going to start talking about writing rules and grammar rules and all those kind of fun things. How many people think, yay?
Woo!
Okay. You're new. Okay, so sometimes you get quotes from authors that actually teach you a lot about how to write. So here are some of my favorites. If you start with a bang, you won't end with a whimper. T.S. Eliot. What does it, somebody want to tell me what they think that means?
Have a dramatic opening line.
Dramatic opening line. Yeah, if your story starts out weak, what will happen to your reader? They'll be gone. They'll never know what you have to say. So that's right. And we're going to learn more about that as we move through today. So the most valuable of all talents is that of never using two words when one will do. Does that make sense? What does that exactly mean? Anybody want to take a stab? Eva?
Keep it short and clear.
Keep it short and clear. Use a powerful word instead of 5 or 6 words. We're going to talk a lot about not writing in passive tense and staying in active, etc., but not today. But it's a good thing to know. So you'll hear me say this often. No tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. Now, it might not necessarily be tears. It could be laughter. Like sometimes you will write something and you'll just know it's so clever. Well, okay, it happens to me, so I think I'm clever. And I'll be sitting alone in the room, 11 o'clock, going, that's so funny, I can hardly wait to read this to Patricia. I'm so clever. And that will happen. And sometimes it's just, a way of expressing anger that you've never heard or read it expressed that way before. It can be any of the emotions, but the emotions have to be in the writing, or forget it. So you will cry and you will laugh and wonder and all kinds of things when you're writing. It's kind of fun. Did anybody find they did that when they were doing their Purpose, Platform, and Profit book? They got emotional? Yeah, that's what happens. So good writing from that. It's kind of painful, but it's good writing. You'll find some good words and things in there later. My aim is to put down on paper what I see and what I feel in the best and simplest way. So Eva, you've already said that. So you're a writer, so you might as well just come right to the head of the class. So that was Ernest Hemingway's. Okay, so I hesitate to say this, but I'm going to, because it was the only thing that everyone in the last 2 classes remembered. And Catherine knows what it is. Catherine, you say it.
Joyce's motto is...
It's Ernest Hemingway's, not mine.
Oh.
It's actually an Ernest Hemingway quote. I just stole it.
Oh, okay.
And Catherine thinks it's my motto. You know what it is?
Well, you made it your motto. So
it's a joke motto.
Okay.
It's a joke motto. Catherine, go.
Okay, so it is write drunk, edit sober.
Yeah, that's what Hemingway would say. Write, drunk, edit, sober. It was Hemingway. What can I tell you? He liked his liquor. Okay, crafting an amazing heart, mind, wisdom story checklist. So you need to pay attention to this. You might want to take out your notes, turn to the page that has this on it, because it's pretty important. And I don't want to just gloss over it. When Patricia was teaching you about clustering, and she said some stuff up here, and I wasn't sure that you understood the significance of it, because I know she does. When you're doing your clustering, you'll find a theme quite often. So when Patricia was speaking of, you might always come back to love, or you might always come back to fear. When you do your cluster until you run out, and quite often you'll run out at the same word, or you'll see suddenly that the same word is repeated throughout all your different clusters, then that gives you a theme for your story. So you might start out by thinking, well, Patricia, do you want to come up and share what happened with your first story? On connection? She thinks that once I take the mic, she's off. She's so wrong. Well, you can come work up here. Work.
What happened?
When you were doing your clustering? And how you ended up with your wonderful story? Connection? Do you remember? Yeah, you want me to tell it for you?
Tell the story part.
I'll tell you what happened for Patricia.
Jog my mind. And
Patricia was doing her clustering and writing her story, and you started out with one story which was about connection, and then it went from there because. It went from there. It was interesting. It was a story that I had told Joy many moons ago, and for some reason it came back in my mind. And when I wrote the story, I realized that it was about connection. And that's when I found out that my whole chapter was going to be on connection. So I went from that story to a time where I had not felt connection or felt connected to anyone. So I went to that period. And then I went to how I became reconnected with myself. So I made like a full circle. So that is my chapter. My chapter is different stories about connection. So it's called Connection, a Matrix. So that's how I got there.
Yeah.
It's an amazing story. Yay, Patricia. So that's her theme, right? The connection. Or not connection, but connection. So it's kind of cool. So you may find that when you cluster. You may suddenly find a theme that allows you to go to different places and incidents in your life and put it into one story. Okay? Okay, so it's important that you have some kind of a theme traveling throughout your story. I mean, for you, it's my story, right? So it's your life. But you won't be able to write about your entire life in 3,500 words. And if you can, you're probably 2. So you're going to need way more room. You need a book to do that. So think about what's the theme and what's the message I want to get out. So the next one is the message of hope and how to by example. So Patricia said to you that it became from disconnection to how she connected. So that's the hope, right? So when people read our stories, they're going to be looking for what happened and what was your answer? How did you find your way out? How many people have been in crisis before in their life? Something bad happened. Did you turn to books? Did you turn to other people? Right, you want the words to heal, right? You want to know how did you handle it. If it's really overwhelming for you, you want to know how did you do it. Now, everybody won't relate to your story, but you're not trying to reach everybody. You're trying to reach the ones who really need you, who will get your message heart to heart. Any questions? It's pretty easy, right? A vivid story, you want something that draws the reader in with action and scene. So we're going to start talking about scene writing tonight, and you're going to see what I mean by that, and you're going to be amazed. So just look forward to scenes, but you want some action in your story. You can't really do that without scenes, so you'll see how that's going to happen. And Patricia's been hinting. I'm not going to hint. The world doesn't want to know every detail of your life. Can you repeat that out loud for me?
The world doesn't want to know every detail of your life.
Right. They want to know the main message, how you got out of it, and how you healed. So that's why you have journaling, because you need to heal. Part of this class, if you're going to tell your story, if you're going to heal, trust me, at the end of this class, you're going to go, I'm so happy I took this class. I am so much stronger, I'm so much lighter, I'm so much happier. I promise you that. That'll happen through journaling. And the exercises in Patricia's book, in the ebook. Then your story becomes what will help the reader without all the little detail. Does it make sense? You're going to learn how to put just the right amount of detail, not too much, not too little. And then we edit with you, so don't worry. If you get really wordy, we'll help you. Vivid dialogue, description, and narration. We're going to talk about that when we do scene writing. Quotes from other books and others that helped you. Anywhere along what you're doing, you can add someone's quote in. Question we always get, what if the person, I'm going to identify somebody, right? And so we're writing an autobiography, they'll figure out that my 3rd grade teacher was Mrs. Smith. Well, then you would just write about your 5th grade teacher, and you put yourself in a different city. Then no one gets hurt, right? So if you have anybody you want to write about, and you want to keep it a secret, and not hurt somebody, because we're about healing, not hurting. This isn't a place to get even with the person who made you mad. Then you talk to us and we'll help you how to do it. Okay? And quotes from other books. You can quote, the rule on quoting is, that if it doesn't take the entire essence of someone's idea or works, you can use the quote. You don't want to go more than a couple sentences, 3 max, out of someone's passage. Does that make sense? I quote Wayne Dyer all the time. I quote them all. You probably saw quotes in that story you just read. I'm not sure, but I love to quote people. Why would I want to quote people? Who's got an idea? It gives me credibility. It says she reads other books. This isn't all coming out of her head. She's thought this through, and there's other people who think the same way she does. And I know this name. I know Wayne Dyer. When I quote Wayne Dyer, do you think people go, oh, I know him? Probably all, half the people who read my stuff know Wayne Dyer, so I quote him. I quote Oprah Winfrey. Just one, little line here. And especially if it's something that's stuck with me, then I think, oh good, this will stick with someone else. Would Oprah be happy to be quoted? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they love it. So it's all legal, it's all good, gives you credibility. And statistics. This is only if it's appropriate. So if you were, you don't have to get bogged down by it, but if you're writing about something that you know is prevalent in society and you want to mention a statistic, it's just 1 or 2 lines. You don't need to go into a whole pile of detail about stats. That's not what we are. But it gives your story credibility. It says this person has done the research. And it makes it easier for the other person too. Any questions so far? Yes.
A question on a point that you made earlier about maintaining the integrity of your story.
Maintaining the integrity of your story, yes.
While trying to respect the privacy of, say, close people in your life.
Right.
So what if it's family members or loved ones or...
I write about my family. Like when you read my story, you'll find out about them all from a humorous perspective because, they're pretty funny.
Yeah.
All of us. But I actually sent it to all of them and asked them to read it. And I said, if there's anything in there that you would rather I not put in there, then you let me know. And we had another lady who was writing a story that included her daughter. And her daughter had been a little brat, right? And not very kind. And so we worked on her story to still put the integrity there, but not to make the daughter to feel yucky when she reads it, because the daughter's moved past what she was going through. So we put it in such a way that the reader got it, but we didn't put her down. So it really depends on the circumstance. Another lady was writing about her husband, who was abusive. So we just turned it into a boyfriend. It does, and another lady wrote about another story, Louise. It was it's a great story about victim hero stories, where we try to, when we've been a victim, we want to turn it into a hero. So it's like I showed him. Well, because for instance, if you got hit by a boyfriend, then some women will go and tell their girlfriends, well, I showed him, I hit him back. She was talking about teenagers though, right? So it was a victim hero story, and hers involved somebody that was really close to her. So she just flipped it into somebody else. So you still have the integrity of the story, but you don't want to hurt anybody. So it just really depends on what you're doing. Does that make sense? And if it's a complicated one, you need to talk to us on a one-on-one, because I don't want to put stuff like that on the tape.
Yeah.
So just have a meeting with either me or Patricia, and we'll help you figure it out. And there's always a way to tell your story. There's always...
Give a message without losing it.
Yeah, it's not about doing more damage. I went through some horrendous stuff as a young person. Just horrendous stuff. And I've been disappointed and let down a lot in life. And I still am laughing, so it didn't kill me. However, I long ago learned that people who aren't kind or do mean things to other people are victims themselves. Right? People don't do horrendous things because they want to. It's because they're either sick or they don't realize they're doing it. There's really no other reason. People aren't born to be mean. So when we tell stories, it's not about ever trying to do more damage to a person who's already damaged. Does that make sense? Right? So there's always a way to tell the story without hurting someone. Always. And still get your complete story. And you will, like one of the guys was writing about trouble he had at his job. So we played with that until nobody could tell for sure that's who he was talking about. And he was had some really mean things to say about this guy. But we disguised it in such a way that guy's not going to come back on him later. Or he might recognize himself in the story. I mean, he was being a jerk, this guy. But he'll never be able to say for sure that's me. And he's not named. So there's all kinds of tricks. So just ask us and we'll help you with it. Okay? Anybody else have any questions? Yes, Rob.
Do you have to put a disclaimer to say names or places might be changed so then it's still like a true story? Does that make sense?
To protect the innocent
Yeah.
and not so innocent? We'll have that in the front of the book.
Okay.
So it'll cover all the stories. Because it's really about the message, not the individual people.
Okay.
Right? I mean, it's our story, so yes, it's about us, but it's the message we want to take to the world is what has to be the most important thing. And there's always a way. There's always a way. Might take some overnight thinking, but there's always a way. Okay?
And maybe some non-sober editing.
Some non-sober editing, yeah. That's about it. What did Hemingway say again? I don't know. Okay, so here's our 13 golden writing rules. This will become your first list of 13 rules. There's a couple more coming in different areas of the course. The one we're going to start talking about tonight, and we'll talk about for the rest of our lives as writers, is the show, don't tell. So it's about having action and dialogue instead of just narrating. Instead of just taking your story from point A to point B through words and story. It's how to put in the words, the feeling, and the action. So we're going to start with that tonight. And reaction. And then we're going to talk about thinking in pictures. People have how many senses? I'm cheating. 6. I like you. He even says 6. She's going to have a good story. Okay, how many physical senses do all of us recognize? Although I'm with you on the 6th and maybe the 7th. Okay. 5, right? So what are they?
Hearing, seeing, smelling,
tasting, touch.
Yeah, touch, tasting, hearing, sight, and smell, right?
Yeah.
So how often should that appear in your writing? Often. Maybe not all 5 at one time, but in every scene, what you're going to learn about writing, you try to get as many senses in as possible. Now, you're not going to go crazy and write a 15-page scene that should take 1 page because you didn't get touch in, right? But we will teach you how to incorporate it because that draws the reader in. And they get right there with you. And that's what you're trying to do. With writing is about pulling the person in with you. What did it smell like? What did it look like? What did it sound like? What did it feel like? What did it taste like? You're always asking yourself those questions. Okay, but this is just quick. We're going to go through this every class. All 13 rules so that they're always in your mind. Begin every scene in the middle. Oh, we first got 3. Good thing you put those numbers up there, Patricia. Craft opening lines that grab your reader. We have a whole class in that. So it just was said earlier. Get them in right away. Begin every scene in the middle. What that means is that, same thing with grabbing your reader. If you start your story out with, when I was 10, we moved from North Bay, Ontario to Vancouver Island, and one winter my mom helped me build an igloo. What happened to the reader? Gone, right? They're like so bored so fast. But if I start about building the igloo with my mom, where's the reader?
Asking what.
And going to her experience or his experience with their mom, right? His or her mom. Because they're drawn right into the scene. They don't really care it's an igloo. They're just going, oh yeah, I remember baking cookies with mom, or when mom taught me how to do this. Hey, I gotta ask you guys a question. Whose mom taught them how to iron? I want to know. Come on, honest. Okay, so quickly, what was the first thing she told you to iron? Like what part of the garment? Did anybody get these instructions or just me? Collar first? What was yours?
Shirt, it's the back.
The back? Don't remember? Anybody else? So my mom told me to always start with the collar and then the sleeves. Right? And yours was the back. So one day I said to my mom, I said, Mom, why is that important to do that? She goes, well, you got to start somewhere. For 40 years, I've been starting with the collar and then going to sleep. Got to start somewhere, she says. Hello. Okay. So you want to start scenes in the middle. And we're going to teach you how to do that. And you can actually start, like I could start, for instance, building the igloo with Mom, and I've taken it, it was actually in Ontario, but I could start with that, because I can remember that day, the way it smelled and it tasted and how much fun it was to be working side by side with Mom doing something so incredibly cool. And then I could drift, either ahead or backwards. I can go anywhere. So if what I was doing, let's just go back to Patricia's example, was a connection story, I could say, oh yeah, and it's not the first thing I remembered. This other really cool thing happened. And then I could jump ahead. And when I was 15, she took me to the store and bought me a choker. Or, you know, not because I'm a dog, they were in style those days. She bought me a choker. And the next week she got me a chain. And finally I was under control. But you can jump like that. And then the story could be about losing your mom. I haven't lost my mom, so I can tell you this, but it could be about losing your mom in the end, right? And you could just like tell them the whole story about the beautiful connection with your mom, and then in the end, you're still connected with her through your sixth or seventh sense. So stories can start anywhere. They don't have to start when I was 10. Okay? With me? Okay, creatively craft out I, me, he, she, and other pronouns. It's really hard. We're going to be writing in the first person point of view. So you're going to learn that tonight too. So those are I stories, right? I and me and we. So you don't, as beginning writers, every sentence you write is going to be, or every second sentence I'll say, I went to the store, I bought a dog, I took the dog home and used Joy's collar, right? That's how you're going to do it. But we're going to teach you as the time goes on. You write that way to begin with, and then I'll teach you how to get rid of them, so that it's more powerful and it's not all I. Because that just gets boring. We're going to learn how to add suspense, conflict, and/or tension. How many people can't put down, have ever read a book you couldn't put down because you didn't have a clue where it was going? How many people have done that? Do you remember the title? You don't have to say it. Do you remember it?
No.
Do you remember, what do you remember about it?
Nothing.
You don't remember anything? You just couldn't put it down?
Oh, are you talking about a bad book or a good book?
Doesn't matter. Can't put it down, so it would be a good book.
Can't put it down.
Cannot put it down.
I remember all the details for the most part, I think.
Yeah, because they got you, right?
Yeah.
They pulled you in.
Oh, I didn't like
What? How many people know that saying, or have heard it expressed, that if something really irritates you, it's because it's part of you? Have you heard that?
Yeah.
I mean, we all own if something really makes you happy, it's part of you, right? We can own that really easily, or it makes us, feel love. We can own that. But it's a little bit harder to own that if something is a part of you that you don't like, that it is a part of you, right? So it's the same thing for your readers. So the parts that the reader identifies with, either subconsciously or consciously, either willingly or unwillingly, is what pulls them in. And the way we can all connect every story is through our senses and our feelings, right? So it's kind of cool. You're going to learn that. And you're going to learn to use unspoken and spoken dialogue. So what's the difference? Well, okay, how many people know what spoken dialogue is? Show of hands. Okay, you're all awake. Good. Okay. I'm doing a lot of dialogue right now. Kind of one way. Sorry. It's more like speaking, not dialogue. Sorry. Okay. What's unspoken dialogue?
Body language?
Body language is good, yes. Body language, but it's not what I'm referring to here, but it is. That's true. Yes.
Thoughts?
Thoughts in your head. Exactly. How many people have thoughts in their head? Bill didn't put his hand up. I'm worried now. As soon as Patricia heard that, she stuck hers up fast. Yeah, it's the things we say in our head, not out loud. And when you're reading Larry's and my story, the way we tend to show it in the way our writing style, you don't have to, but the way we tend to do it is italicize it. Right? So what was I thinking? We will put that in italics. And then the reader knows it's a thought that went through our head and was expressed as a sentence, but was never verbalized. Right? And sometimes you will, we'll get into it later. Can't talk too much later. I'll miss the first one. Master crafting metaphors and similes. I always mix those up and I teach this. But when we get to the class, I won't. But it's when you're comparing things, right? So it was as though it was as hot as an iron. That's either a metaphor or a simile. I always mix those up. I think that's a simile. And then a metaphor is when you compare two things that aren't really alike, but it could be. So that actually would be a metaphor. That would be a metaphor then. Yeah, and a simile would be, come on, you guys help me out. It's the same thing though. It's like it was like this, it was if, as though, to comparing two things. Eva, do you remember from school?
I'm thinking a metaphor is kind of like a story that is representing something else that you don't state.
Yeah, here is just we're just really talking, like a metaphor is like, yeah, that's right, a metaphor is for something you don't state. So that's probably the one doesn't make sense, like hot as an iron. And the simile would be crazy as, I don't know. Yes.
I think that like a metaphor would be like, your face is the moon.
Your face is the moon. Yeah, that's a metaphor. Yeah. And I think similes are actually metaphors, but they have a special thing. And I think that the special thing is when you go like a or as a, like when you do a direct comparison. I think that's the difference. But I mix them up, but I know how to use them. You'll be the same as me. Use bold action for, yeah, she'll go, she's such a great teacher. She goes out there and goes, oh, I can't remember. I know I teach this class. I have a whole class on that. I actually studied that for like 3 days. Wow. Huh. I got a new rule. The new rule is teach sober. No, just kidding. Study sober. No, I don't think so. Okay, the bowl, okay, 11. Oh, 10. 10's my favorite. Putting humor. Why is humor important? It's funny? Thank you. Patricia, thank you. That's your other teacher. Humor is important because it's funny. Okay. It lightens the mood. Yeah. If you can see the humor in things, you can take your reader like into the deepest pain where they're just like aching in the heart and in the gut for you. And then you can lighten it up and just put something sweet and light and funny in there and give them a break. And then they know they're going to have another roller coaster ride with you because that's how you write. Right? So it's kind of fun. So don't be afraid to interject humor, and we will learn more about writing humor. Use bold action verbs. So we learn not to say, he ran really fast. What's a better way to say that? He ran really fast. What's another way to say that?
Sprinted.
He sprinted.
Bolted.
He bolted. Okay, he jumped off the bed. What's a better way?
Sprang.
He sprang off the bed, flew off the bed. Right? Action words with some power, that's important. And adverbs are just kind of boring. You need them sometimes. But if you have to describe, some writers, I'm going to tell you when you study writing, and Stephen King's one of them, are real snobs. They don't like adjectives, they don't like adverbs. Right? So they kind of say to you, if you can't think of not adjectives, I'm sorry, they don't like the ly adjectives. No, it's adverbs. Hold on. Adverbs. They don't like the ly adverbs. So if you say, he spoke softly, then they would say, you're a poor writer. So what's a different way to say, he spoke softly? He whispered. Yeah, in soft tones is even better. Really watch your ly words. It's generally, not when you're first writing, because we're going to teach you to just write your draft, but it's really gets syrupy. Your writing gets soft and syrupy. So avoid things like he ran swiftly and use bolted. And she cried softly. It's actually more powerful to say she cried. Isn't it? She cried. Or she bawled. Right? So just keep that in mind. Avoid the adverbs. And use adjectives sparingly. So it's so funny because at one hand I tell you to put all your senses into the writing. On the other hand, I tell you to be careful on the adjectives. The reason is it gets boring. How many people have read somebody who's got so much description that you just like want to go there, find the author, and rip out his eyeballs? Right? Yeah, it happens, right? You think, where is the story? Oh my God. I didn't want to read a travelogue. So you watch that. So if I tell you someone's dressed smartly, can you get an image in your head?
No,
right?
not really.
No, Catherine can't. How many people, if I just say he was dressed smartly, how many people can get an image? It's your image. Right? Okay, so quickly, around the room, what's your image? What's he wearing?
A blazer.
Blazer. What's he wearing?
Collared shirt.
Collared shirt.
Tie.
Tie?
Suit.
Suit?
Suit and jacket.
Suit and hat? Suit and jacket. What's wrong with letting the reader have a little imagination? She relates or he relates better to your story because they get their own picture. Have you ever noticed you've read a romance story and she never tells you what the hero looks like? She doesn't tell you on purpose. Right? And you could do it for other things like it was home. How many people get an image when I say it was home? Right? You don't need to know that it had blue walls and carpet on the floor and, mom had doilies on all the tables. You don't need to know that. Because the reader's going to go, oh, home. And the reader goes to their home. But other times it's important to put description in. So you may want to add it in. And you be way more descriptive than what I've just given in these examples. You're making choices. But what I'm saying to you is you're always making choices. You're making choices. What do you want the reader to relate to and be able to draw their own pictures? And what do you want to make sure they darn well understand? Because it's important to the story. Make sense? Okay, good. Avoid, so adjectives, okay. So let's pick an outfit that's fun to describe. Dwayne, can you come up for me? Please. He's got a fun shirt to describe. He does.
Pass.
Well, you don't have to talk. You're just going to stand here and look pretty. How hard can that be?
That's hard, not hard.
He's a good-looking guy, don't you think? Yeah. Catherine picked the hot one. Okay, so I want people to holler out descriptions for Wayne's shirt.
Colorful.
Colorful?
Flowery.
Flowery?
Letters.
Loud? I don't think it's loud. Yeah? Birds?
What did I say?
She sees birds? There are birds. Okay, cool. Okay, flowers and birds. Tropical?
Yeah.
Funky? Cool. So, casual. So, a casual, what was your description?
Tropical.
Tropical shirt would be enough, right? If we said it's a blue and white shirt, short sleeve, got flowers,
Boring.
blah, blah, blah,
Yep.
right? So Wayne has a penchant for tropical short sleeve shirts. That's enough, right? The reader can make up the color. Doesn't matter. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. So you see how that goes? Just the same as the suits. And then, of course, we will teach more about that. So avoid roundabout phrases, write tight. That doesn't mean drunk. Although I'm really starting to get to like that, write tight stuff. Okay, so write tight means the things that we've talked about before. Not so much description, never use two words when one will do, go for your strong action words, etc. And we have more lessons. This isn't your entire course on at least 13. That's it. 3 months is up. Okay, so any questions on any of those rules that you want clarified besides what's a simile and a metaphor? Catherine?
Rules are meant to be broken.
Rules are made to be broken. I can tell you've been sitting next to Patricia in the last class. It's true. If you want to read an author that gives you tons of permission for breaking rules, which is more about grammar, it's our buddy on the radio, Stuart McLean. How many people have listened to Stuart McLean? How many people have read Stuart McLean? Yeah, he has the Vinyl Cafe series. Marcus, you were reading him. He's wonderful, isn't he? Breaks every rule. He doesn't really break them so much as he uses them to his own end. So he will sometimes have a sentence with commas and ands 4 or 5 at a time. He will do that. And Catherine's referring really more to our breaking the grammar rules. And there's an old, how many people have heard never start a sentence with the word and? Not true. There's some rules about when you do and don't. You trying to say something, Eva?
Or because.
Or because, yeah. And how many people have heard that prepositions aren't for ending sentences with? How many people know what a preposition is? Okay, another class. Okay, anyways, it's a joke in there. So you can break rules, and we'll tell you which ones to break. And if you break ones that we think are making you look like a poor writer, then when we do the editing process, we will help you with that. Is that fair? Okay. Okay, I'm a writer. I'm a writer. I'm a writer. You sure are. Okay, point of view. How many people know what point of view is? Pretty good, right? It's just which eyes and ears that, or mouth or whatever is how the story's being seen. So it's the way the author allows the reader to see and hear what's going on. So it's the voice that tells the story. So I'm going to tell you more than that in a minute. I'm going to quite often give you expressions that I really don't care if you ever learn, or terms that I really don't care if you ever learn them. But if I don't give you something as a reference, we won't really have a common language. So the 3 points of view are first person, second person, and third person. Everybody knows that, right? Well, you do now. Wakey, wakey, you guys. Almost time for a high five, I can tell. So I'm starting backwards because I can break the rules, like Catherine said. So the third person point of view is like what most novels are written in. It's where most fiction writers start out because it's easier. And it's your standard he, she, they story. He said, she said. That's what they call it in writing school, right? The he said, she said story. It's the most common you'll find. It differs from the first person, which is going to be the last thing we cover because it's how we write, or what point of view we write in that it's the author's own voice is in first person, like an autobiography. You would expect that to be in first person. Doesn't have to be, but you would think it would be. And in third person, you can get into everybody's head, right? Because you're telling it, you know, he seemed, okay, this is another rule. If you, anybody here thinking about writing a novel? Because I can save you a lot of heartache. Okay, this is the number one thing to know about writing a novel. You can switch points of view when you're doing third person point of view and jumping into people's heads, right? So I can jump into my hero's head and I can jump into my heroine's head. If you jump into both of them in the same scene, so you're thinking for the hero and then you're thinking for the heroine and expressing their thoughts, you will repeat information till the cows come home. You will bore your reader to death. So unless you're very skilled, and trust me, we're talking 10 years down the road. So when you write your novels and you want to do point of view, you go into the heroine's point of view, for instance, like one character's point of view, and you do the whole scene in that point of view. I'm going to teach you tricks for that. Then in the next scene, if it's important, and only if you want to, you can go into another character's point of view. And you could do that through, people have done it through whole books, where one chapter is this person's point of view, same people playing in the game, in the story. The next chapter is the next person, same people playing in the game, different story. Dwayne, your story when it becomes a book, it'd be really fun to write, because Dwayne worked in the prison system. It would be really fun to write one chapter from the warden's point of view. You just make a smooth transition, so there's like tricks so that you don't confuse the reader. Guard's point of view, new guard on the block's point of view, prisoner's point of view, right? And I can teach you how to do that so that they don't even really realize you've done it. Only skilled people can pick up that you've done it. Just makes it way more interesting, right? But it's called head hopping. So if in one scene, like if I'm writing, okay, I'll get your attention. If I'm writing a sex scene, right? You'd be really tempted to go from the man's point of view to the woman's. Wouldn't you think? Mm-hmm. Right? You will bore your reader to death because you'll have them both thinking, oh, it feels so nice to touch me that way. Right? Or he kisses like it's the butterflies fly through my head. Whatever. You have to be better than that. But anyways, butterflies fly through your head when he kisses you. You've probably been writing drunk again. So you just stick in one person's point of view for an entire scene. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, good. Okay, so when we're telling our story, we're going to be doing it in first person, and I'm going to get to that. So it'll be your voice. So it won't be like a he said, she said. Here's an example. He gripped the dollar bill tightly. You can't have it, he told her. Greedy bugger, she thought, already forming a plan to make it her dollar. Once again, they were at loggerheads over a measly dollar. Now, could I have told that from his perspective instead of hers? Could easily switch it, right? Doesn't really matter. It's up to me to choose because I'm writing the story. But once I get in the head, I got to stay in the head. And there's 1,000 things I could tell you about that, but I won't today. Okay, second person point of view. You and yours. This is like in advertising mostly, if maybe only. People have written entire novels like this. It would make me buggy. I don't think like this, so I can't write like this. Readers feel central to the action, so they use it for advertising. And you'll see in what we put down here. Author talks directly to the reader as if They're identifying with what the reader's thinking and pulling it out of them almost, like you'll see in a minute. And it's you wouldn't use it in fiction. If you used it in autobiography, you'd probably need help after you were done. Professional help. Okay, example. You will stand in awe as you look out over your room side pool. See the you? Right? So they're putting you in the picture. Think about what has happened to you. In 3 years, there have been 3 things. You lost your job, you lost your husband, and you lost your self-confidence. You so often ask yourself, am I crazy? Who does that in real life? Does anybody know? Who?
I do it.
Yeah.
I think everybody.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we actually ask ourselves, am I crazy? Yeah, no, I do that daily. And when I'm not asking, Patricia's asking, so I always know the answer, probably. Don't care. No, counselors and doctors, right? Like if you go to the doctor and you've been through a trauma, the doctor will say, you've been through so much, right? Or it's time to have a blood test because you've told me, or you know, you've been this, you've been that, you've been that. So they're putting you, they're just identifying with you, but they do use it. But not in writing. Who wants to write like that? Not me. Too boring. First person, that's what I want to write in. So story is told in the narrating character's own voice, which would be ours, because we're writing autobiographies. Reader is limited to what the character knows. Gets a bit tricky in telling an autobiography, but I'm going to show you how. And most autobiographies are told in the first person. So here's an example. I was a cool kid. My parents were wound as tight as golf ball guts. Sometimes I imagine them breaking free of their pimply casing and unraveling at light speed. Never happened. Too bad. Would have been fun to watch. Hardly any eyes. Did you notice that? Yeah, I'm going to really be drawing your attention to that, so you're not going to be an eye writer. This is your golden writing key number 1. Show, don't tell. So we've talked a bit about this already. We want bold action verbs, strong dialogue, and vivid description. So we're going to compare these two paragraphs. You ready? Okay, this is how you're going to start out writing, pretty much, guaranteed. I was minding my own business when Mom came into my room. She was mad because it was messy. She said my bedroom stunk and that I better clean it up. I was too tired and hot to care. I knew all she cared about was, should I actually have emphasized she cared about was that my jerky dad was coming for his first visit since their divorce. Heck, she was so mean the dog growled at her. Not a bad story, right? You get the picture? How many people can picture that?
Yeah.
Anybody relate?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You can always tell by my examples that there's probably a little truth in there, right? So, okay. Look at this, though. I was playing video games.
Yeah.
So now we've drawn them in, right? We're putting a setting. We're putting it into setting. When Mom burst, and she didn't come into your room, she burst into your room. What's with you, I grumbled with a lazy shrug as the dog bounded off the bed and growled. So you're kind of getting a little more of the urgency, right? Setting it up more. Hands fisted on her hips, Mom snarled. It stinks in here. Clear the crap off the floor, hang up your clothes, dump your garbage, and make your bed now. So you're getting a little bit more of what Mom is like, right? A lot more than Mom just coming into the room unannounced and unwelcome. The room was hot. I was exhausted. Apparently she didn't care. Mrs. Neat Freak had stupidly married Mr. Army Sergeant. It was his first barrack inspection since their divorce. So what if I failed? What was he going to do about it? You get a lot more, right?
Attitude.
A lot more, because this is more written in a scene. You see, this is just narration, right? See the difference?
Mm-hmm.
Who wants a comment? Catherine.
Okay, you get more feeling in the second one,
You get more feeling in the second one.
and it kind of gives you more relation to the character.
More real, yes. You more relate to the character, more understand him, more color. When you write novels, and I'll just throw this every now and then because we're not writing novels, but you actually make your characters bigger than real life, but still believable. Have you ever heard that said? Yeah. In this book, when we're writing an autobiography, we kind of have to stay a little bit more true, but get the description out there so they get it. Right? You can't, like when you write a novel, you actually put 3 or 4 people that you know together. It's kind of fun. When you're making somebody mean, you think of 3 mean people. Yes?
Well, I just want to say in the narration, you're kind of just following along.
Yes.
Here, you can hear it, you're there.
You're there. Well, let's pick out the emotions. I haven't done this in this one. Let's pick out the senses. So what have we got here? Well, we got the eyes a lot because we got fisted. We got hearing because we got snarled, right? So we're using sound. What else have we got here?
Smell.
You've got hot. Hot's a feeling, right? Like I was hot. Stinks. Stinks is a smell. Yeah.
Burst, you can hear it,
Burst, you can hear it.
See it.
you see it.
Yeah.
Exhausted is the feeling.
Yes.
Shrug, you kind of feel it.
You kind of get that, yeah. And then you see what we've done with the dialogue, the inner dialogue at the bottom. So what if I failed? What was he going to do about it? It's kind of almost like he wants to egg him on, right? And it's just a thought that's in his head that he wouldn't say. Obviously, Mom would knock his block off. My parents were very kind and loving, so don't be thinking this was my parents. I got told to clean my room, but, you know, Dad would never have cared because he never went to the rooms. Okay, here we go. Oops, going the wrong way? Oh, no. Now, one of the problems when you're writing in first-person point of view, the I, me, my, mine, our, we stuff, is how do you get to the reader what someone else is feeling or thinking? Kind of hard, eh? Because it's only told from your point of view. Right? But we make assumptions about what people are thinking all the time, don't we? Based on their actions. Or the way they say things or their words, their dialogue. Yes?
When you finish talking about the last slide,
Yes.
you said he, like the person you were talking about was a boy in the story.
Yes?
But I viewed it as a girl.
In the last story, you want to back up?
Yeah. You never say if it was a girl or a boy. So you said he, but I was thinking, I picture it as a girl saying.
You thought that was a girl because I never gave it a sex.
Yeah.
I thought it was
Too funny.
too.
How many people thought it was a girl? What a riot. I was writing about a boy. What a riot.
I thought it was a girl.
No, I thought it was a boy.
You thought it was a boy?
I thought it was a boy.
You thought it was a boy?
Yeah.
What a riot. I love it.
Playing the video games.
You know what's cool about that? Is you could all relate to it because it didn't have a sex. The story doesn't have a sex, right? Too cool. Good point, Marcus. You're so smart. Okay, so here we go. So we do think that we know what other people are thinking or concluding, etc., right? Is that not true? We do. And you're going to find times when you want to put that in your story. I don't recommend doing it a lot because you should be able to pretty much let the reader figure things out on their own through the action in the dialogue, right? Because we don't want to take away all the imagination or it's not fun to read your story. So let's say that out loud. It's not fun to take away all the action because it takes the fun out of the reader being able to figure things out. But sometimes I want to say what I think the bugger's thinking or the girl's thinking. So here we go. So we have, I call these traditional words and phrases, which is spelled, is that spelled right? Phrases? For first person expressing other characters' motivations, thoughts, reflections, and conclusions. You don't use this a lot, but now and then you will need to. So the way you do it is you say things like, apparently she didn't care. Now normally, if I want to show, rather than say, this is more like narrating, if I want to show that someone doesn't care, then I go, they shrugged, rolled her shoulders, threw her eyes to the ceiling, right? So you can do it by showing. But every now and then I want it to really stand out. Maybe because I'm pouting about it, right? So apparently she didn't care, or it seemed she didn't care. I could see she didn't care. It was as though she didn't care. It was if she didn't care. She appeared not to care. So when you need to pull that in, that's how you do it. Does that make sense? Clear as mud, I'm sure. It will when you write. Oh, I'm a writer! I'm a writer! Too funny. Okay, we get to do some work. So earlier today, Patricia had to do some clustering around your story. Do you remember doing that? Wasn't that fun?
Yeah.
Now, different people's minds work in different ways. So some people are great at clustering what's happening and then they can go off and write their story, no problem. And I want to add about clustering is that sometimes your story, you don't know what to write. Like you really want to say something about this mean old dog, but you don't just want to say it's a mean old dog, although that's kind of cool. But you might want to say more. Maybe the dog's important to you for other reasons, or maybe the dog plays a bigger part in your story and you're not quite how to do it. Then you go to clustering. You write dog. And then you cluster. And you'll find out what the connecting dots are and what's the most important thing to say about the dog. So you can use clustering for a part of your story and how you want to develop it. Does that make sense? Like a paragraph or a scene. So some people are great at clustering and other people are great at categorizing. I'm a categorizer. I mean, I cluster because it's fun because Patricia taught me how, but I only learned that last year. So obviously if you're writing since you're 14, you have different methods. So for me, it's always event, and then the changes, and then the wisdom. Well, when I'm writing a novel, it's usually just event and changes overall and wisdom. What's the most important thing when you're writing a book, reading a book, and or watching a movie about the characters? Most important thing besides them being real. Stories are always about the effect one character has on another, and usually it's a two-way street. Do you know that? Movies and novels. So, grumpy old guy, little kid comes to the door. Snarls at the kid refuses to go away. By the end of the story, what's going to happen?
They're going to become friends.
They're going to become friends, and the old grumpy old guy's not so grumpy. Kid affected grumpy old guy. Right? Woman has had her heart broken 15 times. Meets guy. Guy's really kind. Woman tries to reject him. Guy doesn't go away. What's going to happen?
She's going to kill him.
She's going to kill him. Catherine's going to write murder mysteries. I write romance. Okay, but there's going to be a character change, right? The one's going to open up and, maybe start to trust love again, right? And the guy's being persistent, and maybe she does something that toughens him up a bit. It's all about one character playing on the other. Well, that applies with autobiographies because people are trying to get through your story the same kind of thing. What's the message? What's the effect? But they're thinking, not how's it going to affect those two people. They're thinking, how's it going to affect me? Right? Does that make sense? Okay. So we're going to take a minute and we're going to take your story and pull some events that you circled about, that you clustered about. And now we're going to put it down to event, the change, and the wisdom. Does that sound like fun? This is really the crux of what you're doing. This is your story. And I have another tip for you. That the story you think that you're telling today may not be the one you write. And because of Patricia's exercise books and the clustering and this exercise, you may find you have an even more powerful story than the one you originally started to tell, message-wise. So pay attention for that. Look for it. And so here we go. You guys have 10 minutes. How was that? How many people found that useful? Good. The clustering in that is a powerful tool. Yes?
Useful after doing the clustering.
After doing the clustering. Yes. So because you're a clusterer. Yeah. So that's excellent. And I cluster now too because I found it a powerful tool too. So together they're dynamite. So after the clustering, it was a very powerful, this was a good way to do it. Anybody else have a comment? Anybody learn anything new? Anybody figure out their message more? You did? Good. Okay, well it's late, so we're not going to do any more sharing, so let's just move it along. Oh, good. It's the last. You get to read and study Joyce's and Larry's story. When I write, I'm Joyce Ross. In case you guys don't know, that's me. So you'll see it under Joyce Ross or Joyce May Ross. And Larry Chase is one of our, obviously, Heartmind Wisdom authors from the first book. I'll tell you more about him next week. So what I would like you to do as your main assignment this week, in addition to Patricia's Purpose, Platform, and Profit workbook on integrity, forgiveness, and acceptance, find some time to do that. And then read and study Larry's and my story. So what you want to do is read it first because you want to enjoy the story. And then I want you to go back and read it again and think about why I did my story the way I did my story. And where does Larry add in scenes? Where does Joy add in scenes? What have we done with description? What have we done in terms of pulling in the five senses? Sometimes we just narrate because that's what we want to do with the story. We're just moving it along, so we narrate. And sometimes we go into more detail. So really pay attention. I'm getting you to study our writing this week so that you know what we put in Heart, Mind, Wisdom, what kind of flavor we're looking for. But one of the things that we will do is study authors forever. I still study authors. And like Catherine says, I love it when I find one that lets me break all the rules. I had the world's, English really uptight English teacher. Mrs. Reese was her name, actually. Maybe she wasn't. Is Reese English? Yeah, I think so, right?
Welsh.
It's Welsh or something. Anyway, she was like excellent. She taught us all kinds of wonderful stuff about grammar, but I'm still afraid to break the rules. And what's happening in writing is the rules are getting more relaxed every year as people rebel. So it's good for me to read people like Stuart McLean, who still stays in the rules, but he kind of does them in his own way. And there's other authors that we'll get you to look at too. Stephen King is very by the book with the rules. I was just reading Stephen King. He's got a book called Stephen King on Writing. Anybody heard about that? Get it. It's the best book on writing ever written. It's called Stephen King on Writing. So if you go to the library or you go to the bookstore and you say, I want Stephen King's book on writing, that's the title. So it's easy and it's just amazing how much he teaches you about writing in like just one book, and it's all interesting. You learn all kinds of fun stuff about Stephen King. And so in your ongoing writing assignment, Patricia, you want to come up and say goodnight? Is Great Writers Read, right? And you're a writer, and we listen and observe everything and everyone. And here comes Patricia to close off the evening. Thank you. No, I lost. I got you back. Okay, so give Joy a hand. Give me a hand. Okay, we're give yourself a hand. Okay, so did you enjoy the class?
Yeah.
Did you grab something? Even for the people that are here for the second time, I bet you learned something new. It always is the way. Okay, so have fun this week. Do your homework. So when I ask you next week, everybody's hand goes up. When we've done the homework, it's actually fun. We shouldn't call it homework. We should find a new word. Sort of.
Fun work.
Discovering
You had
yourself.
homework up there.
It's a writing assignment.
Discovery.
Let's call it something else. You know how we have feed forward? We should make up another word for writing assignment or homework. Home fun?
Home fun?
Home fun.
Writing bursts. Home fun?
Writing bursts? I love it.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good one. We're going to have to remember that. You might see it up on a PowerPoint next week. Okay, so thank you so much. I know it's a little bit late, so let's go home. Okay, good night, everyone.